latest of Alan Wicker's travels. While here on 2, we join Anne Nightingale for Late Night in Concert.
Hello and welcome to Late Night in Concert. Tonight we feature the music of the excellent King Crimson. Since their cult success in the late 60s, the band have undergone many changes, but their founder member remains the legendary guitarist Robert Fripp. Because of his work with people like David Bowie, Blondie and Andy Summers of The Police, he's regarded as second to none in the music world. But it's a world he likes to escape from by spending as much time as possible in his hometown of Wimborne, Dorset, which he considers, rather eccentrically, to be the centre of the universe. But tonight he's on stage with King Crimson. They play a unique blend of music. I think you'll enjoy it.
There were two brothers in Bournemouth, Michael and Peter Giles. Peter was a bass player, Michael was a drummer. They were looking for a singing organist. I was the guitarist who couldn't hold a note to save his life or anyone else's. So I applied for the job and worked with them for a month. And after a month, with my tongue in my cheek, I said to Mike, "Well, Mike, have I got the job?" And he rolled a cigarette, a gold hole burner, Golden Virginia. Very slowly lit it and pulled on and said, "Well, let's not be in too great a hurry to commit ourselves to each other." So we went to London, lived in abject conditions for nearly 2 years of unemployment, and eventually, over a series of changes, became King Crimson. And suddenly, overnight, the group exploded.
For the court of the crimson.
Good afternoon. It's time the King Crimson extended itself. We would like a new audience so that we can get away from the expectations of our reliable audience. New music, new audience. This is what you can do for us. Now, we have, I believe, a little taster of the left side of the King Crimson album, which is accessible. The right side is excessive. New York works at 3 times the speed of London, and London works at 3 times the speed of Wimborne. So New York has always been a catalyst for me. In 2.5 years in New York, one has roughly the equivalent of 21 years of normal experiencing in Wimborne. So the traditional separation was that in Wimborne I rested, felt secure, had the physical, geographical and emotional base to go out into a situation of complete madness. For me, it's obviously there's a knowing in the blood. If your family has been in an area for 300 years, direct line of descent, father to father for 300 years, the blood is very strong. The blood is essential, and there's a knowing which is in the blood, which one accepts. Robert Fripp is the animal I live inside. This is the creature that I inhabit. Whoever I am is apart from this creature. Nevertheless, the creature has a knowledge, an instinctive insight of this area, a feel for it, which I don't question. I feel that I'm home. I feel secure. This is a foundation in all aspects of my life for the rest of the madness that my life is. In loving remembrance of George Fred Fripp, who died February the 13th, 1888, aged 44 years. This is one of, at a guess, Abraham's brood. My great-grandfather Abraham and his father, my great-great-grandfather Abraham, were both quite prolific. And many relatives extended, went to Australia, all around Dorset. I don't know George Fred, I'll have to ask my father. But he was one of Abraham's brood without a doubt. When I'm in obscure and exotic locations all around the world, all I can think of is getting back to the King's Head, morning coffee with my mother. The first mention of Fripp, the Fripp name in England is 1492. They probably came over with religious persecutions from France. It first appears in Dorset about 1530 at Edmondsham. And the Fripp line direct descent in our family goes back to 300 years to Witchhampton.
Things have changed a bit since your father's day.
Yes, the premises have changed. The council are just about to demolish the old premises on Lye Road. They put a road in by the back of Temple Hall, and they're even going to demolish the Georgian offices at the front. Tony Jones said to me, my father's partner, when I was going to leave, he said, "Why don't you ask Cosgrove if he's interested in the job when you were a solicitor's clerk then?" And I asked, would you be interested in being the estate agent? I bet you regretted that day.
Yeah, yeah. And Tony Jones seemed like a nice chap, really, as well.
Excuse me interrupting, team. How are the spirits?
A little higher than last time.
Hello.
You've collected a few more rejection slips.
Just a few more on the kitchen wall, really, you know.
I couldn't bring my guitar in. It's in the studio with
Robert.
Andy's.
We've got one you could borrow.
Well, I'm downstairs in 10 minutes in the record shop.
Oh, dear.
That's a new tune, boy. What's that one?
It will be Sunday.
We'll be going in the studio in a couple of weeks to record that one, so...
Need a guitar player?
Well,
Another guitar player?
We'll give you a ring, actually.
Yeah.
You know.
You let me know. Who shall I sign it to? John. Is this the first King Crimson record you've had, John? And why did you buy this?
I heard it a couple of times in the 6-1 comedy and liked it.
You're allowed to play records?
What, it's the tape?
This is at Queen Elizabeth. Was it a bootleg tape, John? Thank you.
Come down, I'll give you a demo tape. It's the first time we've been in this studio. Speed tracks, so it won't be too long and painful.
Right. Social science. I've heard of you, actually.
We thought perhaps you may, being in the business, to be able to give us some tips.
Good. Would you like to live in London?
I have lived in London.
Yeah. Would you like to go back?
Yes, I think so.
You got 7 years in London.
It's nice in London.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's not so much of a rat race.
If you want to be successful in music in England, you have to live in London. I'm very sorry to say you can't do it from Wimborne. You have to go and live in London for 7 years. Resign yourself to it. The industry in this country are in London, and they are not going to come to you.
notes.
They're not going to come to you. Even trips on the river, even tea in the Yew Tree Cafe will not seduce the industry to come down here. You have to go to them for a period of time. And then if you're good enough and ambitious enough and really, really want it, maybe you'll be successful.
But it's worthwhile just to send tapes to music.
It'll do absolutely nothing at all. 10,000 tapes a week arrive. Don't send a tape, take a tape. Put a face on the name.
That's best policy.
Yes.
For
Yeah, you'll still be rejected 99 times out of 100. But nevertheless, go there and be there with it. And it'll take time. When I first began playing guitar, which was December the 24th, 1957, when my parents bought me a very cheap guitar for Christmas, almost immediately I knew that this guitar was going to be my life. One night, coming back from college, I think it was, I turned on Radio Luxembourg, and it was late, and this music was playing, and I had no idea who it was, and it was actually Sgt. Pepper. That incredible wind-up at the end of the day in the life. Ah, terrified me. Shortly afterwards, I was listening to, almost all at once, Sgt. Pepper, the 6 Bartok string quartets, Dvorak's New World Symphony, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, male blues breakers with Clapton and so on. And although all the dialects were different, the voice was the same. And at that time, at 21, I couldn't say no. This one night, with a day in the life galvanizing me, was really the turnaround. That's really when I knew I couldn't go to the College of Estate Management in South Kensington. One of 200 men and 4 women taking a degree in estate management.
Do you like that, Robert?
Very handsome, Andy.
I found it this morning.
Let me tune up to you there, Andrew.
One, two, three, four.
Can we get the F sharp now? F sharp. Well, it's early in the day, let's face it.
C. C soprano.
As one moves from Wimborne to Cranbourne, you turn left to Witchhampton, and then you go from Witchhampton to Moor Critchell, and you cross the Blandford to Salisbury Road. Life changes. Here in Wimborne itself, we're becoming part of the catchment area for Bournemouth. The fields and villages which I knew as a boy had been filled up with ill-designed bungalows. There is a break between Wimborne and Cranbourne. Grass is allowed to remain there. You move north of the Blandford-Salisbury Road and it slows down a bit. Barbary Rings is a Iron Age hill fort that is about 3,000 years old. It lines up with Old Sarum and is an important sighting zone for several straight tracks. Some would say the Roman roads were built to converge around Barbary Rings. Others would say that the Roman roads were built on existing straight tracks all around England, and Barbary Rings goes out over here in straight line to Old Sarum. I used to play on these slopes with my sister. 25, 27 years ago. You can see the farmhouse of Lodge Farm, the 14th century hunting lodge, where the League of Gentlemen rehearsed in 1980 and King Crimson in 1981. The walls are 3 feet thick, and if the group rehearses in the front room, you won't be able to hear them in the kitchen. The difficulty about talking about spirituality is that we make it something other, something apart or outside of ourselves. And the so-called inner life, there's really no inside and no outside, unless we wish it to be there. Quite a while that all the contradictions of being a rock musician, it was simply not giving me the answers I needed. The questions which took me away from Wimborne weren't being answered even by Crimson. So I had been looking around for help, direction. And one Sunday night in Putney, in my bed in Putney, I read the second inaugural address of J.G. Bennett to Sherborne House, the second basic course at Sherborne House. And the top of my head blew off, because I knew this was exactly what I had to do.
Why?
Well, it's not rational. Part of me recognized something which all the rest of me had to go along with. And I saw, it's so difficult to talk about these things, I saw what it was to be a human being. And I saw that it was possible for me, as it is for everyone, but that for me it was possible, but I also saw the price I had to pay for that. I saw what, if you like, real freedom as a human being is. And I saw it was possible for me to have that, but I saw the price that I had to pay. And at this time, King Crimson was just about poised to be the most successful rock band in Europe. And I'd spent 7 years working like this. So how could I throw away my career to go and live in a house with 100 loonies at Sherborne in very uncomfortable conditions, and if I give up everything which I'd acquired up until the age of 28? At the same time, I knew I had to do that. Well, I left the industry for 3 years. When I returned to active service in New York, I was simply one of the musicians on the scene in New York, along with all the other team, the new wave musicians then. Eno I'd met and worked with before. He was living in New York then. Bowie, I did a couple of Bowie albums. Blondie, I would hang out with Blondie. Often have brunch with Debbie and Chris. And they would phone me up and say, we're playing at CBGB's, we have a benefit for Johnny Blitz of the Dead Boys, who's been in a knife fight. Would you like to come and aid the benefit? So I go and play with Blondie. Very informal.
What about musically, working with people like Bowie?
I enjoyed it. He gave me freedom. He gave me the structural freedom to do what I can do. Within King Crimson, my role is not really directed towards guitar playing. It's really directed towards other elements, organisation and so on. But purely as a guitar player, Bowie gave me the structural freedom to be the guitar player which I can be from time to time. Wonderful fun. The first album we did in Berlin, under the shadow of the Berlin Wall with a machine gun turret aimed into the control room. They could have sprayed us at any time. That was the first time. That was lots of fun.
From nothing, we'll drive them away. We can beat them just for one day. We can be heroes just for one day.
Just for one day. Just for one day. Special thanks to Mr. Robert Fripp. Hey, hey!
I've been very fortunate to work with a number of very gifted musicians. I was never gifted as a musician. So I could recognize the quality of music present in a gifted musician, a natural musician. And always worked very hard, practiced the technical side of the instrument, knowing that one day I would learn the secret of music. some of the gifted musicians I've worked with that didn't value the gift, it kind of atrophied. The quality of a gift is that it has to remain in motion. You can't hang on to it. So for me, because none of it was natural or easy, I began playing tone deaf and without a sense of rhythm. I had to learn how it was, or where it was in the human instrument, that one acquired rhythm, and where did the musicality come from? And all the work I've done as a musician has been hard, but because of that, everything I have in music is mine. I paid the bill before it came in. The first division is popular mass culture, colossal success, the police, things like that. Second division is where one works professionally and honourably and earns a living. And the third division is arts and craft. I've generally enjoyed a civilised life at the top of the second division, which gives you, for me, more mobility than any of the others. You have access to the first division, you earn a living, and yet you can still go and play in the Minster. Whereas if you're in the first division, if you're a member of the police, or if you're Bowie, or whoever, you have more opportunities but a lot more limitations. I prefer to travel light. One evening, completely exhausted, while driving to the BBC at Shepherd's Bush to appear in a live interview with Anne Nightingale on the Old Grey Whistle Test, my manager Sam Alder mentioned Wimborne, and at that time I was not sure where I would live in the world next, whether it would be staying in New York or Paris had an appeal. I thought maybe Paris for 2 years, but the mention of Wimborne struck a resonance, and in that flash I knew it was back to Wimborne. As a professional working musician, there are limited opportunities in Wimborne. You might do the Liberal Hall twice a year, British Legion once if you're lucky. You might get a few gigs at the Allendale Centre if you pull political connections, but that's about it. So for the working musician, work is elsewhere. I commute between Wimborne and New York. Goodbye, England. Rather sad.